Rules of Engagement. Scott Hensler, Tinfoil Hat Club, Friday, October 12th. Moving forward, moving closer to the game or the end game of the demonic. So the question is, what are the rules of engagement? Now tonight, as I go into the show and the details that I want to talk about, there's a lot of controversy on what we can and can't do as pertaining to the so-called Christian church today. I've heard many things from those who do spiritual warfare or actually doing witchcraft to just that everything was done. We don't need to take care of anything. We're just to ride the wave. Well, that's not the truth. That's a lie. Get my volume here. So the church, as I said, would tell you not to engage, to stand down. The occult would tell you you have no power or authority to do so or otherwise challenge them. Well, what does the real world tell us? Otherwise, those things that are taking place when we engage and we stand and fight, there are things that can come to the different outcome, so to speak, and that is the whole point of tonight. So the meaning of that question, what you can and can't do, are you powerless? Are we to stand down? Are we to allow ourselves to be abused? Well, absolutely not. Do we hand over or give back the keys of death and hell that Jesus Christ, that is on his death, has returned back to us? Just think about that. Is that what we're going to do? We're going to give these keys back to Lucifer, to the fallen angels, to the demons, that Jesus Christ willingly sacrificed himself on the cross. Do you see the contrast now, how ridiculous that is to do so? No, those are given to us to engage, to fight, to take authority, to take back what evil has stolen from us, to occupy. Okay? Absolutely not. So this world belongs to Satan for now. Okay? We are the thorn in the side of the devil and his demons. Otherwise meaning truthers, Christians. Now there's a difference between one who calls themselves a Christian, one is a false convert, one is a true believer, one who believes onto, one who just simply is religious, that follows the teachings of man and most likely the doctrines of demons. And so this world that we engage in, the rules are very confusing. They're very gray. But is that God? Absolutely not. He is truth. There is only one way, and it's his way. And so anything other than the truth that comes from God is a lie, and that is the basis of tonight. And so since Satan deceived the whole world, his only tactic is lies. So do not fall to the lies. Now, I've mentioned before that some believe that if deception comes, that you will see it off in the distance like a rider in the desert bringing up dust from a horse's hooves. That's not the case. Deception comes in many ways to be upon us and is upon us right now. The great deception, the great lies, those things that come upon us that put us in bondage because of our belief system, puts us in a bondage position that we are unteachable. We cannot hear the truth. We cannot believe the truth. And I'm guilty of it myself. There are so many things in this past, let's say, 30, 40 years, especially when I became a Christian in 93. Things that I believe because the church taught it. The pastor, the pulpit, those who were of a structure that was based in Freemasonry, based in even coming out of Catholicism, that is a doctrine and traditions of men, and it has nothing to do with the truth. And so our ROE, our directive, our rules of engagement, were for us to stand down or to engage in different methods that have nothing to do with God. Lies, you have no power. These are lies. Lies that you have no truth. They're lies. Lies, you have no right to defend yourself. Those are lies. Absolute lies. Now, when a perp, molests a child, and during the event or during the abuse, and even after, they'll say to the child that if you tell anybody, they won't believe you. If you tell anybody, they won't love you. If you tell anybody, they won't believe you. If you tell anybody, they'll think you're a dirty little child. And I've worked with many people over the years who believe that lie, believe it to this day. And it's one of the things that I help them get past is the rejection of that lie. They are lovable. They have worth. So everything that was put in place to them since they were children, whenever the event took place, this trauma, they believed it. And so their world was based on this lie. And it's a terrible circumstance because it's so heartbreaking to see people beat themselves up to the lie, going through life thinking that they do not have worth, that they are unlovable, that they don't deserve a good person or something to share in their life. And so there's an act of sabotage that takes place. Well, this is the rules of engagement of the evil. They do it. They come in and they throw the fiery darts, they throw the lies, they bring some nincompoop to you to tell you something that is a partial truth, but yet it's part of the continuance of the lie that you believed when you were young. And so, boom, there you go again, you're down for the count. You, me, all of us have been lied to our whole life. Our total existence on this flat rock is one to do the works of Jesus Christ. This is what we're called to do. We're called to fight. We're called to take back what the enemy has stolen. And so the rules of engagement from Christ is to cast out demons, to expose evil, to again take back what the enemy has stolen, to preach the gospel, to make disciples of all men. And when you lay all of that out, there's only one way to do it, and that's to stand with your clenched fist and say, I am not going to be abused. I am not going to allow evil to have its reign in my life. I'm not. And the moment that you understand your worth and who you are and what you're called to do, then get ready for the fight, because that means the opposition in the spirit, those that are infected with demons that have been strategically placed around you like a chess piece, come in and try and take your. That is what happens. And some of you get taken out, some of you get knocked down, some of you kind of get jostled a little bit, but you get your feathers ruffled, but yet you come out of it. And so when the old saying, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. Well, there's a lot of controversy on that. But the point of it is that we are in a fight. We are in a situation that when we stand in the authority of God given to us through what Christ had done, otherwise, again, taking back the keys of death and hell. Putting us in a position with power and authority that no one else has. Lucifer doesn't have it. The fallen angels do not have it. The demons do not have it. Man himself, as a standalone, does not have it. Now, the occult would want them to believe that they have power. They have psychic power. They have healing power. They have all this other garbage that comes from the demonic. But the only truth is that that is a lie. The truth is that Jesus Christ, what he did on the cross for us, gave us the ability to fight, to cast out demons, to heal the sick, to bind up the brokenhearted, to continue the Great Commission. This is what we are to do until the return of Jesus Christ. And so many of us, as we go through life, we think, well, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like it must be a duck. But this is not true. False sexes, transgender, Baphomet. Well, we've had this in front of us for many years, especially coming out of Hollywood. Many of the actors and actresses that you have grown up with or or that maybe you look up to today, or that you like as an actor in the movies, we find out they're not really who they say they are or who they pretend they are. And so they walk like a duck and they quack like a duck, but they're really not a duck. And so basically, your inability to go to that next level, because when you first hear that this so-and-so was actually a male and this so-and-so was actually a female, it's a shock to the system. It's something that disrupts, it corrupts, it alters, it changes. It's like being hit by a car. And so you get knocked down, you kind of get your bell rung for a little bit, and it takes a while to come out of it. And this is happening at an alarming rate, an accelerated rate to all of us, because as we start to learn the truth, as we start seeing what's really going on, it's a shock to our system. It's a shock that there's been intervention with Scripture. It's the mental health, the corruption that's everywhere, to the level that it is, that when you finally comprehend it, like I did back 2009, I think it was, when I finally, got knocked off my horse and I had to stand there and look around. I had a hard time getting out of bed for about 6 weeks. The depression, the anxiety, knowing that this world is, we're talking about government, we're talking about our friends that we grew up with. When you realize the brainwashing that they've accepted, that when you really engage in a conversation with them on the truth, that they're incapable of hearing the truth, and you just wonder in the world who these people are. It's very shocking to the system, right? So basically, in this depravity that we have is in every public office. It's in the movies and TV and even in pornography. There are those that are transgender that are even in, and some of the unfortunate people that I've worked with, bestiality has been an issue. More than you would ever think. I can remember when I was serving in a ministry down in Arizona, it seemed like for about 30 days that everyone that was coming in had bestiality in their history, their bloodline. They had parents that were into it, they had a mother who was into it, and it's like, how does this happen? Where does this all come from? Well, it comes from lies, thinking that it's okay, thinking that it's natural. So since the lies run so deep, why trust what you see or feel or hear? I don't anymore. I question everything. And for those who think that's paranoia, well, it is to a degree, but paranoia is based in fear. I have not been given the spirit of fear, but power, love, and sound mind. So if it does not make sense, it does not make sense. The occult, the meaning of it, those things that are hidden, operate in divination, witchcraft, sorcery, basic those in Luciferianism, those of New Age, Mormonism. You'd be surprised how corrupt that is, Catholicism. Even the fact that churches today were based, many of them, like the Baptist Church, in Freemasonry, like Mormonism. So anyways, what they want you to do is they want you to stand down, not to fight, to receive a healing, not to receive deliverance. And if you do not receive deliverance and you do not receive a healing, you're wounded. You're going to be continued. Now, here's one of the things. You can be traumatized by something and then be healed, and then speak about it, and it does not grip you. But if you're traumatized by something and you are not healed, that when you do speak of it, it grips you to the point that it rattles your soul. So there's a big difference where you can hear the name of someone or see a situation or revisit the situation, and if it shakes you to your very core, then you haven't been healed yet. But if you can just stand and look at it and observe it and say, well, I should have did this and I should have done that, and this wouldn't happen, and there's a logic behind it where you can learn from it and move on. But that's only in healing. And so many of you have alters. Many of you have multiple personalities. And believe me, it runs deeper than you would ever think. More people have it. I know that some of the trauma that I went through, I had some alters myself that needed healed. I know there were things that were done to me in my childhood. There were things that were done in a horrible marriage that I was in. That is, that as that trauma came to points that I haven't even told or discussed many of the things that I went through, that because these things were so overwhelming that I too developed an altar in order to deal with it so I could move on. They needed to be healed. The spirits behind it that were part of the abuse that were allowed in because of the abomination against my very soul from other individuals who were demonized and demon possessed, that in itself was an entry or legal right to have me. And this happens over and over again with everybody in one way or another. Now, some more than others. I mentioned before that you can take, let's say, 5 demons, duplicate all of the 5 demons. So now you have 5 demons and you got 5 demons. And then you take a person who has a very strong constitution, a very strong knowing of themselves, and you take this one set of 5 demons and you put them in them. And then you take somebody who doesn't know who they are and has bought the lie and believe they do not have worth, and you take the 5 demons, the other ones, and you put them in them. Well, the one who has a strong constitution just has a bad day. The other one has life-changing events that destroy them forever. So it's very strongly based on who you are. So meaning that as we go forward into the times coming, the events, the potential trauma of the future that's coming, now we are not to live in fear. We are not to worry about tomorrow. But there are things that are going to happen, and we need to be educated, we need to be prepared, we need to be ready for these things. So those who are broken, those who still need deliverance, those who still need healing, that as these events take place, it's going to be very devastating for them. But those who have been healed will be the strong ones. Now this, as I call to those who have been delivered, those who have been healed, that as our friends, our neighbors, our loved ones, as they are going through healing or have not been healed yet, as the events take place, then allow them to lean on you. Now, this is love. This is God's love. I know that when I was going through things, I had somebody that, I don't know if it was a year later, came up and gave me a word, and meaning, a prophecy, a word from the Lord. And they just picked me out of the crowd and said to me, my son, no matter what has happened to you, I want you to know that I have been with you all along. Because if I had not been with you, it would have been worse than it was. So regardless of the circumstances and the situations that you are in, give praise to God. You will find that as you're being bombarded by the enemy, as you stand in love and truth of God, that as these things are happening and you praise God, it takes the chutzpah out of the demons. It absolutely breaks them. It takes the stank out of it. They're unable then to go to the next level, because just like Job, as his wife, his loving wife said, just curse God and die. Well, where do you think that came from? But that's not the case. When you know who you are and you know that God has not let you down, that this is simply a battle and a war, then as these things are coming, give praise to the Lord. So they do not want you to receive your healing. They do not want you delivered. So they have set the world rules of engagement against you, against me, against those who are believers. And now before I throw my 2 cents in concerning the subject any more depth, I want to tell you a story I have not mentioned for a few years now. It's about a child. I don't remember exactly how old, somewhere 5, 6, 7 years old. It was a small Chinese girl that was adopted by an American couple. And they brought the child in to a ministry that I was involved with in Phoenix. This was a few years ago. And this child was from mainland China. She was full Chinese. She was abused. She was neglected. She was rejected. And for the most part, basically was sold off. And through whatever channels that was arranged for adoption from China to America, this couple was able to receive this child. Now, this child, unfortunately, was very withdrawn. She had cigarette burns all over her body, which I found out later during the interview and during manifestations of the demons, that the father had been burning her whenever the child didn't do what the father wanted. She could not and would not engage with her new adopted mother. Now, this was a woman, a young woman who could not have children, who ventured out into the world to find the child and found this child and spent the money. You know, they spent quite a bit of money to get this child. And here, you know, she thought that she would have a child that was very loving, one that would be, you know, like a daughter, and it was not the case. Now, you can imagine, you know, I mean, exactly the circumstances of the child and what went on, and when the child gets here, so traumatized, so broken, so much in fear, that the withdrawal is really an act of survival. So this was the situation. She would not engage with her new adoptive mother, who already loved her very, very much, and it was absolutely obvious. She was at her wit's end on what to do with this child. The child would not allow her to be held. Anytime that she tried to show love to the child, she would be disruptive. She would even cry out, "Leave me alone." And it was, you know, and it's amazing how much English that she did know. She didn't, you know, being as young as she wasn't very well versed in English. She was able to communicate her dislikes of her mother. So since the child came to America through legal channels, and there was a legal adoption, then in the spirit realm, which is extremely legalistic, then the mother and the father, the new father, were the difference, okay, in the spirit. And this whole time, as she fussed and cried and even screamed out not to be held, she, with the new parents, came into the ministry, as I mentioned, the child really not having any knowledge of what was happening, that this was extremely heartbreaking. Now, the gentleman who ran this particular ministry that I was assisting at the time was not there. When they came in, I wasn't expecting them. There were several other people there because we were getting ready for I don't remember if it was a Friday night or a Sunday night, group deliverance. I do not like the word mass deliverance. I call it group deliverance. And so many of the female assistants of deliverance were there. And so there was an abundance of females. And I think I was the only male at the time. And so anyways, we went into the office, did the interview, and there were more women in there than I needed anyways. And so I did a selection. I picked who stayed and who went. And this was based on what I felt that the Holy Spirit was telling me, to the nature of the particular woman that was to assist me in this deliverance. And it was very crucial, very important, that there was not to be any aught in the woman's heart. There was not to be any resentment. You know, most everyone's been through divorce. Everyone has something against someone, right? And so the 2 or 3 that I picked, to me, I believed had some of the purest hearts. I know one of them for sure. No matter what had been done to this woman, she didn't hate anybody. And this was very, very crucial, because if there's any opposition, if there's any unforgiveness, anything that is a legal right for demons to hold their position and not be obeying to the word of the Lord, that is a circumstance that unfortunately can cause deliverances not to be successful. And so, again, I picked and choose. And there were, I think, like I say, at least 2 that I had with me. Now, I took authority, and as I selected these women, that in the spirit, that I was determining the rules of engagement, meaning that I had all power, I had all authority given to me by Christ who was in me, that I was not going to tolerate opposition. I was doing the best I could under the circumstances. Again, this was not my ministry, but I seemed to get the torch handed to me at the time. Now, again, as I mentioned in some of the shows in the past years, I haven't really talked about it much. I've done deliverances where there were other people assisting, and they were not in agreement with me. And I had someone challenge me one time during a deliverance, and the demon was almost out. And when this person spoke up, challenging me, then we were no longer in agreement. And the demon manifesting through the person, because it was almost like kind of like a wet squeezed bar of soap coming out of the hands of the demon, was almost out. And then the demon started laughing through this person and then went back down again and back into the person. And I never did get that demon out that night. So anyways, the total forgiveness is needed in situations, meaning that we humble ourselves, that when we come together two or more, that in our agreement we are stronger. In our agreement, then there are no lies. We have each other's back. And so, like a tag team with them, this deliverance that I was doing on this child turns letting the Spirit lead. And so it really was one that was a different type of deliverance. And what it was is that the women got the word of knowledge to speak to the child in love, to verify the child's worth, that she was loved, she was adored, she was treasured, she was a jewel in the eye of the Lord. And this speaking was breaking things off that were in bondage, that came from the abuse from those who were the original parents in China. Speaking the truth concerning speaking the truth of the worth of the child. I do not remember the curses I broke off once these women were done, because once that stage was set, I came in and just started knocking demon heads, started casting them out, breaking the curses off. Okay, now exactly everything that I did, I don't remember. I do so many. When you're led by the Spirit, when it's all done and the smoke clears, I don't always remember everything. But I know that division and rejection were two of the main curses that were on this child. And when we were through, this child put her arms up to be embraced by the new mother. For the first time in a year that they had this child, the child called out the mother, clinging on like a child who was lost, had just been found. You see, the curses are real. The devil is real. Demons are real. Fallen angels are real. And those in this world that deny it, that gaslight, they are evil. They have evil hearts. Now, many can be deceived, but they can be cooperating with the evil to continue the barrage of attacks on him. So we, as a whole, would basically, in our agreement, were able to come as Jesus intended to, more, knocking down the lies, breaking the curses, casting out the demons, allowing this young Chinese girl now to be loved by an American mother. Now, understand that anyone who has aught, that do not condemn yourself or get mad, because you may be in a position that every day you're hit over the head. You want to forgive, but every day there's an offense. Every day something takes place that puts you further and further back. Just remember that one of the things that took place in that deliverance was because of the love that everyone in there had, regardless of what had been done to them. Now, again, do not lay pearls before swines. Do not allow yourself to be abused. But again, when someone is repentant, when they have a change of heart, it is up to us then to to forgive them. Now, that deliverance most likely would not have ended the way that it did if there had been any opposition or that there had been any aught in the heart. Now, I tell that story because if we had not, as a whole, engaged the demonic curses, the child would basically be, to this day, in bondage, still with fear, still with abandonment, still with rejection, because I can assure you that this child would have been self-destructive, meaning that any time anyone tried to engage in love with this child, whether the child then became a teenager or an adult and moving on to having relationships, the child would be self-destructive. The child would not understand the worth. At any time anyone came along and tried to show love, she would destroy it. She would sabotage it. And unfortunately, many of you do the same thing, or have done the same thing, leading to the destruction of this new family. Eventually, it would have tore the family apart. The husband would have thrown his hands up and walked out. The mother, who knows, feeling that she had failed, would have beat herself up for the rest of her life, turning to drugs and alcohol. So the rules of engagement given to us with the authority of Jesus Christ is what are free. So I'm telling you that anyone who tells you that you do not have the right to engage, that the rules of engagement are for you to stand down, they are a lie. Because if we had stood down, if we had not acted and done what we were called to do through the great commission of Jesus Christ, who knows where this family would be. Now, there was another instance too. I can remember praying for this woman, and you would have never thought the demons that came out of her would have come out of her. She was a very beautiful, sweet, charming woman, but boy, she had some bad boys in her. And as they came up and out, you just got to wonder. Anyways, when we were done with the deliverance, I said to her, I was getting a word, I said, there are 5 things that the Lord is very pleased with you about. And she looked at me kind of perplexed, and eventually she said, wait a minute. She said that she sponsors 5 orphans. And then I got a confirmation. And at that point, then I had her name the name of the orphans, and she went through the list and called them by their first names. I broke all the curses off, all the rejection, all the fear, all of the poverty, all of the things that were the circumstances that made them orphans, and then bless them. Bless them as if I was the father through this woman. This is what we're called to do, ladies and gentlemen. We're called to heal. We're called to break the curses. We're called to set the captives free. And it's getting harder and harder to remember that because of the way that things are set up. The rules of engagement that the world has placed on us has us under the thumb. So do not receive it. So anyways, if you are to be a child of God, called to do the works, then start acting like it. Now let's look at politics, rules of engagement for war. Now, one of the things, whether it's the Afghan war, Iraq, Afghanistan, those things that have during the administration of Bush, and I don't even want to get into Obama, but he put the troops in a place where they were not allowed basically to fire first. They had to be fired upon. And because of this rule of engagement suppressed the troops, the enemy learned this, and then it became a hit and run situation where they would sniper, they would come in and jump our troops, whether they were open fire, whether they were throwing incendiary devices, and then they would flee. Well, that's insane. Because if you're going to engage the enemy, you know you're going to fight. You know there's going to be death. You know there's going to be people wounded. You know there's going to be fire. Now, This means that no way did Bush ever intend to win this war, which was a lie to begin with. When we talk about 9/11, we talk about putting the American people under the authority of the UN, under the authority of the World League of Nations, under the Illuminati. That's what this was all about. So the rules of engagement meant that the U.S. citizen, now it's just like California. Now, I'm very close to the California borderline. And here in Nevada, I'm able to carry a weapon, either exterior or concealed. But as soon as I cross over into California, I cannot do that. Meaning that the rules of engagement that California has placed, breaking the constitutional right to bear arms, that I am not allowed to protect myself and my family. This is exactly what the world wants you to be. They want the rules of engagement for you to stand up incapable of defending yourself. And many, many soldiers, men and women in Iraq, Afghanistan, died because of that rule. Now, I can remember the Border Patrol agent who ended up in a firefight against a known drug trafficker. And the drug trafficker, I think, took one in the buttocks of like a 9mm. And they arrested the Border Patrol agent. And I don't remember how long he spent, but Bush was in office, and Bush could have exonerated, could have taken him out, but he would not. Because it turns out that the cartel that this particular drug trafficker was with was somehow related to the Bush family. So the rules of engagement for, especially when Obama was in office, that they were not to engage illegals. And if the word illegal offends you, then you're a liberal. Now you see, the Constitution of the United States of America is to protect our borders, to keep the people, the public, of those within the United States safe. Now, if someone wants to come into this country, then they come in through the legal channels. I'm good with that. That's what made this country, or at least the facade or the lie of it, I should say, to the point. Because in reality, the United States and in its real true building, unfortunately, was not as we were told. But us as the people, what we came together to be as, not the government, not the federal government, not the states, but the people, are what I'm talking about. That in the strength of the understanding that the laws that we have are to keep us safe, to keep the peace. All right? All right. Now, again, when we see that the rules of engagement being applied by the Illuminati, being applied by the New World Order, being applied by the federal government, being applied by the churches, being applied by local governments or even institutions, that it is one that really doesn't make any sense. It doesn't keep the peace. It doesn't keep us safe. So, again, not shooting until you're shot at is a situation where the first bullet finds you, you never have a chance to fire back. It's the same thing in the spirit. Be aggressive. Go after the demons. Go after the curses. Do not be a victim of a drive-by shooting. We are at war. Then, if we are at war, then that means we're not at peace. And if we are at peace, it doesn't mean we're at peace, because we still have spiritual war. We are still at war, because evil does not rest, does not sleep, does not eat, does not stop. Evil does what lives. And the only way to eliminate evil is to not negotiate with it, eradicate it. It's one of the sayings that I've used for years and years and years. Now, we are to operate in love, but that also means that we will not tolerate anything that allows a child, a widow, the innocent, the weak, the hungry, the homeless to be taken advantage of. So that means that we, at times, have to be tough. Now, this means that you know who you are. That as we engage with discernment of the truth. So be nice where it's needed, but be hard when hard is needed. Be loving when loving is needed. So if you just go across the board and stick with one attitude, it doesn't work. There are time for war, a time for peace, a time for living, a time to die, time for life, time to kill. We see this in Psalms. We see this in Scripture. We see that there are times that we need to make the adjustments to engage properly. There is a time of peace and a time of war. So knowing your rules of engagement is the only way to survive. Meaning, knowing what to do, what to say, how to act, where to act, also knowing who you are. So, if you do not know who you are, then the demons, which unfortunately are, someone saying, Scott, you think demons are behind every bush? No, they're in your noggin. They're in your sex organs. They're in your brain. They're in your heart, causing heart attacks. They're in your brain, causing strokes or dementia. They're in people such as those that are referred to as reptilians in the Illuminati, that have no love, that have no concern for the human race. They only wish to eliminate. So there are demons everywhere. I can remember someone said, I was out in a remote area along a lake in a cabin. And you know what a gaming camera is? You put a camera out and it has an infrared sensor, so if a deer or a bear or an elk or moose come along, it'll take a picture of them. Well, this camera that I put out by their lodge, I came back a week later, and this picture was very, very bizarre. You know, if you have two shadows, otherwise, you know, two things that block the sun, and then the shadows intersect each other, it just becomes one part of the shadow. But this actually had contrast, whether one shadow was actually on top of the other shadow, and there was definition that you could see that one was on top of another. How does that happen? So something very supernatural was happening, and it was captured. It looked like it was some kind of creature casting a shadow that had like a squid or an octopus or a leviathan or something that was very bizarre. And when I had told the owners of the cabin, the woman said, "Oh, Scott, there's no demons up here." I was shocked at that statement. There is no distance in the spirit realm. The fourth, fifth dimension, second heaven is all around us. So to think that because you're in the middle of the woods there are no demons, that's insanity. We are like radio waves or light waves or anything. They're everywhere. It's whether they have the legal right, whether they have the ability to manifest because of the legal right, that we either know they're there or they're not there. We have supernatural events. We have paranormal events. We have portals where things come and go. Sasquatch, for instance, which I believe has the ability through audible sound, through frequencies, through the resonance to be able to breach the spirit, to come and go in a porthole. So it does not matter. The point of it is that wherever you go, you're going to be engaging. And so we're basically also means that we're not to be spectators, because everywhere we go, there will be evil. Everywhere we go, there will be demons. You are called to expose evil, to fight, to cast out demons, to heal, to occupy this flat rock. Now, I'm a flat earther, right? And for those who think that that's crazy and everything else, you know, I thought that was crazy too. And there were several things that I needed to get past scientifically. I come from an engineering world of electrical controls, of radio communication, of industrial radio, meaning that they used it to heat items, you know, such as water beds, making water beds and so forth by melting plastics. And so with my history of engineering, of the sciences, because I go from everything from electrical to electronic to mechanic to pressure and vacuum. And so there were many things that I had to overcome to believe in the flat earth, to understand, but Scripture was quite clear. And so if God said it, if it's in His Word, then it's worth investigating. And I was able to do that. And so if you go back to some of my old shows on flat earth, I think I entitled Round Earth, Flat Earth, I systematically go through the difference between buoyancy and gravity, vacuum and pressure, all of the things, especially the way radio waves travel, which is called propagation, how it all comes together, that eventually as I overcame those lies, which basically, because we were told several things, and everyone who ever told us that it was around Earth were Freemasons, by the way, that in this understanding, as I brought it all together, I was finally convinced. And it took about 2 years. And when I finally came to the conclusion, then I got what I refer to as a confirmation or a witness in my spirit that I had finally come to that understanding. Now, going back, unfortunately, many are still in bondage that are called. Many are still in fear. Many have been brainwashed by the churches not to fight. We should not fight, they say. These are lies. We are to fight. Now, you'll note that I'm only doing one show a week right now. I was doing several for several years and doing a lot of deliverances. I'm trying to get caught up on my family life, trying to take care of things that I've neglected for a long time, and then getting back into more research, getting back into doing more writing, more videos, and probably getting back to more shows. But the point of it is the more I look into everything, the more that I uncover everything. It's kind of like when you buy an old house, you need to go in, you need to refurbish, you need to pull the carpet, you need to pull the sink, you need to pull the toilet, you need to do whatever. Every time you pull something and lift it up, you'll find out that there's a lot of damage there. Anything from just rot of the wood to termites to whatever. Every time you look under a rock, you'll find something that should not be there. And so understand that as I move forward and do more of the research, I'm going to probably get away a little bit from the basic teachings I'm doing here when it comes to like rules of engagement, because I want to talk more about reptilian. I want to talk more about the supernatural. I want to talk more about those things that have established themselves in the physical, which are spiritually driven to be part of the end times line. Now, with the bondage that is in place with most people, understand that the division that's taking place, that just as it was during the Civil War, where you have the left-right paradigm, you have the North, you have the South, you have those who believe in slavery and those who didn't slavery and free trade and not free trade, that unfortunately those who were in the middle, those who were not soldiers, those who were victims, those who were civilians, did you know that 50,000 civilians estimated died during the Civil War that were not engaging in the war? They were spectators. They were farmers. They were men and women, children who were not soldiers. This country is divided every bit as much as it was during the Civil War. Now, the only way that they can do it is by lies. The lie of liberal and conservatism. Now, I say this because this left-right paradigm of Republican and Democrat is nothing more than to split a nation. It is nothing more than that. This two-party system is absolutely a lie. We have also the complications of it, that in those who are one side or the other are united together in Luciferianism, witchcraft, and sorcery. we have a full Illuminati pretending to be our public servants, our presidents, our congressmen, our lawmakers, those in law enforcement agencies. So it does not matter. You see, evil is. Evil does what evil is. And so, again, this left-right paradigm is nothing more than a division that, as we saw in World War II, so with it, if 50,000 during the Civil War died who were civilians, can't even imagine. And of course, we have the Georgia Guidestones that tells us how many they want to eliminate, get it down to 500 million. But in it, that the lies that are perpetrated are done with media, are done in it, indoctrination through public education of our children, unfortunately. Basically, this whole thing is giving all power to a handful of individuals. And you and I, right now, are in the middle of it, whether we like it or not. I have on my website, tinfoilhatclub.com, a page dedicated to those who pretend to be on our side. But you basically, anyone who gives an occult sign, Illuminati hand sign, I have many, many pictures on that website. The site or the page is referred to as the Goat Head Wall of Shame. And in there, you will see everyone from Hollywood stars, political leaders, to the president, to those that you even look up to now. You will see, basically, a large collection of male, female, young and old, leaders, actors, politicians, so-called Christian leaders, throwing up the Illuminati hand signs. Now, again, it walks like a duck and acts like a duck. I'm saying it doesn't necessarily mean it's a duck. So they can stand in their suit, they can stand there acting like it, but when they give you the when they do the 666, when they give you the upside down pyramid, and then repeatedly do it over again. Now, when someone keeps doing this over and over again, and even after all of these years, because remember, this has been known for some time, you would think they would, even if it was a mistake or an accident, they would watch themselves. They would stop doing it, but they're not. They're continually doing it, so they're telling us who they are. And again, and again, and again. So you can believe, if you want, that the president is one brought in by God. I'm sorry, I do not believe that. Now, from Trump to Hollywood, they are telling us who they are. Esoteric, exoteric. One hidden in plain sight. I said before, I needed to hit the reset button several years ago, because everything I had believed, everything I thought that I believed turned out to be a lie. So I just literally had to start over. And, as time goes on, I didn't make a mistake. When I learned that what was really going on and how even the churches themselves are under this great deception, part of the Laodicean issue, that today it holds true. Because what I thought I knew was wrong, when I found it was able to be, meaning that you have been brainwashed, that your cognitive ability to comprehend, to process, to open up to other information that can confirm that things are not right. When you deny this unfortunately is part of the demonic stronghold. And this goes all the way from the founding of this nation to the structure of the universe. Everything that we have been taught is a lie. And that is Satan's deceiveth the whole world. Then he deceiveth the whole world. If this is what Scripture says, then he does. So you yourself need to take a step back, question everything, that we literally live in a lie, and that we die by the lie. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to buy the lie anymore. I'm going to question everything. I'm going to look into everything. I'm going to weigh it. I'm going to lay a piece of paper down and draw a line down the middle of it, pro and con. I'm going to investigate. It's one of the things about being a Berean, by the way, to search the scriptures daily. The rule of engagement are written, when it comes from God, the rules of engagement are written in truth, not lies. So once you open up to a lie, unfortunately, when you receive it, then there's a demonic transfer that takes place. You start, otherwise, when truth comes, then because the demonic stronghold is there with the demons, lying demons, then it keeps you from hearing the truth. So you start to see, unfortunately, how everything is a lie, and it's heartbreaking. And many of us can no longer take any more heartbreak, so we reject that lie. And unfortunately, it just keeps evolving into even bigger lies. And what do they do? What does a lie do? It brings death and destruction, not life. All right. Well, it's time to go. I'll see you next week. Thank you for your support. It's been very generous this week. It helps me get the bills paid. I thank you, and God bless. Now, as the weeks are coming up here, I want to do a little more on the world situation, specifically those things that really affect us. There's talk about martial law during Christmas time, during December. Now, if you remember Jade Helm, that was under artificial intelligence. If this is something that is going to come and still exercised, you need to remember that the military, that the executive branch has control of this military. And if they allow it to happen, again, it tells us exactly what's going on. All right, God bless everyone, and have